balls on these guys, honestly. Oh, wait, are we recording?
What is up, sexy people? It is Dave, it is Duncan, back from Metal Epidemic for another album review. And for this review, Duncan and I have been checking out the new album from Bergen Punk's Blood Command. The band's new album, World Domination, will be released on September 29th via Hassel Records. World Domination was recorded at The Ranch in Southampton, the UK, and Spacecraft in Bergen, Norway. Produced by Ingvar Andersson, engineered and mixed by Simon Jackman, and mastered by Dag Erik Nygaard. The album is 20 tracks long and has a runtime of about 36-37 minutes-ish. This is album...
And it's not a grindcore album.
No, it's not. No, it is not. It is album number 5 from Blood Command, which follows up the band's 2022 release, Praise Armageddonism.
Which they heard me mispronounce and then shame me live. And to be honest, I would have done myself.
Yeah.
I've been on stage.
We reviewed that album, thoroughly enjoyed it, so it was only right that we returned to do the follow-up. And what a ride it's been, Duncan. Honestly,
This all makes sense now.
It really does. But initially, I did not have a fucking clue what was going on. From the initial singles, yep. I was questioning everything about life, everything.
To me, this is like this. Every band should do this now. Like, my biggest gripe of the modern era of music is that I feel we get too much from bands before an album comes out. We've listened to half the album before the album comes out, and then we'll listen to it, and nominally we've come away with an impression which is slightly deflated from what we thought we were going to get.
Yeah.
Very, very seldom. There are very few bands that release singles, and then when you listen to them in the context of the album, you're like, all right, this totally fits, or it works, or it elevates, or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's few and far between. I genuinely feel these days I have a good grasp on what an album's going to sound like from a band before the album comes out.
Yeah.
Blood Command. If we're given context here. Context is always king, right? They released Praise Armageddonism. We loved it. We went to see them live. We interviewed them, and during the interview, there was a whole lot of this album was written 2 years ago, and there's other stuff in the pipe. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's other stuff maybe recorded at wink wink, and like nothing else out with that. And then we got 2 cover songs out of nowhere, which were both excellent. And then they started releasing the singles, and the singles that came out from this one were not necessarily what you were harsh on them. I liked them. I think Losing Faith was their first single, and I have spun that to fucking death. I sing that all the time. It was like a weird mix of fucking cowboy music and Blink-182. I don't know. It was amazing. It helped that they were wearing cowboy hats in the music video. So we got that. We got Decades, which was a kind of pop, electronic pop song for the most part. What else did we get? They've released like so many singles as well. There was another one. And I'm
nothing that sounded like Praise Armageddonism at all.
Nothing sounded... Well, no, nothing... In fact, actually, if we're being honest, nothing on the album sounds like Praise Armageddonism.
Not really.
I think is a smart move, because nothing before really sounded like Praise Armageddonism either, and that being a concept album based on a religious cult kind of worked for me in that kind of standalone facet. The first time we got Teeth from, and they were, let's put it this way, they released 6 singles ahead of this album coming out, which seems like a lot. The album has 20 songs, right? So it's just over a quarter of the album has made its way out.
Yeah.
But the first time we got something that resembled a sound that we were more familiar with was Forever Soldiers of Esther, which is a heavier track.
Yeah.
And I was like that, right, this is, right. Whoa, this is more what I was expecting, and that's fine. Once again, I was in on the previous stuff, but I was trying to get Dave in, and Dave was slowly moving away from me. Every single day was like, no. And it was a great track. And then we came together.
Yeah.
We prayed at the church of the Plague on Both Your Houses, which is an absolute fucking arse-raping shagger right of a track. It is so good, man. It's so fucking good. Fucking black metal and trumpets and blast beats and like all this fucking shit coming from everywhere. And then we had the album. The album came in for us to review before the new single that's come out, which I think is Heaven's Hate. Is that right?
Yeah.
Which, once again, if you listen to Heaven's Hate, contextually speaking, the band have released 3 soft songs, 3 heavy songs, right? I can't think of another single they can release from this. The reason it makes sense to me, in the order of what they've done, is the longer form songs have made the single release. There is well, Dave said there's 20 songs. It's what, 38 minutes in length?
Yeah, something like that.
37 20
minutes,
songs. Do the fucking math. There's a whole lot of really, really, really short stuff on here.
Yeah.
But if you were thinking for 1 second coming to this album that it was going to be a softer affair, then sit down and shut the fuck up. This album is the heaviest thing the band has done. Like that. It is fucking ferocious. Like the word that sprung to me is, this is punchy.
Yeah.
Like all the way through, this is a punchy album. And I don't know how much of that is Blood Command and how much of that is the influence of their new vocalist, who is all over this. Her attitude, her venom, her spit, her tone is like, it like dominates this, which is why the closing track is so smart, right? But we will get to that later on.
Okay.
So, Dave, you listened to it after I had sent you a little message, and sent a message saying, I think I understand why this. It was something along the lines of, have you listened to Blood Command yet? I think I understand the release order of the singles. And you were like, haven't listened to it yet. And I was like, well, enjoy 20 tracks. And you were like, 20 tracks? Question mark. And I was like, bye. I was like, fucking out of the chat. I left you to it. If you were like me, the first listen was an assault on the senses, and I kind of sat like staring at my fucking device at the end of it going,
Yeah.
I need what? I did not get a hook in at all on this on the first listen.
Did you not?
So I'm interested to see how you got on with it.
Well, yeah, as you said, initial singles had me worried. I was a bit like, I don't know if I like this direction. What's going on here, guys? Come on. And then obviously the other singles came out. I was like, all right, okay, I'm back in. Looking forward to hearing what's on the album. Heard the album, and the first thing I thought was, well, that's how you level up from the last album. Because
I'm trying to literally levels up as well, which I fucking love.
I kind of love it when bands do this, when the creativity levels are still running really high, and they're not afraid to just fucking try new things.
Oh god, yeah.
Even if they don't work, they'll take a chance and they'll go for it. The good news is the chances Blood Command have taken on world domination are all pretty much fire, to be honest.
Yeah.
And I think if you're a fan of the last album, Praise Armageddonism, don't fret, because although this is different, there's still a lot here that you're going to enjoy. I think if you like the last 100%. Album, you're still going to like this. There's still hooks, there's still bangers on it, just slightly different. However, there is so much more to that. Firstly, I agree with you. I think this album goes way harder than Praise Armageddonism. They've really intensified the kind of hardcore punk element of the band. That opening track, The Band with the Three Stripes, is like a full-on fucking razor-edged hardcore punk track that for me was like,
starts off like something from a west. Like
it does,
like, I've seen the spaghetti western. There's always, which is another thing I love about like the inclusion of. One of my big pet peeves, we talk about this a lot, is bands that throw in like a saxophone.
Yeah.
In the middle of the album, you're like, there's no saxophone on the rest of the album.
Yeah.
What the fuck are we doing here? Like that, like bands that are bringing in brass instrumentation, even if it is synthetic, which this might be. when they bring that in, it's revisited throughout the album.
Absolutely.
It's not one and done.
Yeah.
So it's merited. But I was listening to this. I was listening to all the track and go like that. Cowboy hats totally makes sense. And then all of a sudden, that fucking almost, it sounds like a gallop.
Yeah.
But it's the drums.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Drummers like that.
On this album, I was getting like it was kind of radiating bands like Ignite or a Wilhelm Scream, or even Comeback Kid to an extent. I felt there was a more of an American kind of streak coming through on this.
Yeah.
I actually completely forgot I was listening to a band from Norway. I was like, oh wait a minute, yeah, this sounds like something from the US, but it's not. This is a Norwegian band. And that that kind of American kind of punk vibe, it bleeds through on a lot of the tracks here. Forever Soldiers of Esther, Stay Awake, Bear Witness, and The Shadow of the Deaf. It's not us, it's them. And sometimes, it goes fucking full on, really intense, like fucking fast as fuck, really fucking furious in the rhythm, and the vocals are fucking just fucking chaos. And then other times, it goes more into maybe like a more kind of like skate punk, maybe like where there's like a bit more kind of melody and a bit more of a hook in there. But in amongst all of that, it's got it's cleverly kind of pulling you away from American at the same time, and those comparisons, and it's gone, but wait a minute, we've got this kind of Scandinavian effect as well, which we're also going to blend into this. And that's where you hear the band's kind of own stamp kind of coming through on the music. There's a certain like characteristic that you'll hear from bands of that territory. You know what I mean? Your Refused, Turbo Negro, the Hives. They've all got that kind of like that trait that when you hear it, you go, like Scandinavia, and it's kind of like the French production thing. You know what I mean? When you hear it, you're like,
you know it when you hear it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like you instantly, like I get fooled a lot when bands copy it, and I say to Dave, like you're like, oh yeah, they're from Australia, and I'm like, no, they're from Sweden. Sweden is where they're from, because it's a sound, it's a vibe, it's a feel. You just have. There's a bit of the tone there as well, but when it clicks, you're like, where it's, what region of the world it's from.
Absolutely, and that starts to come in as well. So you got a really cool mix of the different kind of areas coming through. I felt like you could hear that coming through really clear on like Heaven's Hate or Hate Us Cause They Ain't Us, where the guitars are much more hostile. And the blend is really well done. I love the punk side of the band on this album. Is fucking awesome. It's the best I've ever sounded in that's kind of side of things. It's much more interesting and varied than Praise Armageddonism on that side of things for me. Then they've just like fucking completely switched shit up on tracks like Valley of Hinnom, The Plague on Both Your Houses, and Blue North, where they've integrated this like blackened side into their sound.
Norway, baby.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Norway.
Sometimes it's just like a blackened influence. Other times it's like The Plague on Both Their Houses, where they just fully embrace it and go fucking full black metal. And it sounds incredible. Like I absolutely love it. I think it's bold. It's daring and it works 100%. As you said, I'm maybe not surprised, being that they are from the country that it originated in, but it blends well and it complements the punk stuff incredibly well.
Blend's the right word. It shouldn't blend as well as this.
Yes.
Like bands like Covert Attack like bring in that blackened element, but the band still has a harsh sound.
Yeah.
They bring it in here, but there's polish to it. It's black metal on something that sounds polished and refined, and it shouldn't fucking work, but totally fucking works.
It does. And it adds a kind of darker kind of smear to a lot of the tracks, which is giving you that real kind of variance in the tone of the album, which really shows how much they've evolved in their songwriting on this album. I know Praise Armageddonism was written, well before it came out, 4 or 5 years ago.
So, like at this stage now, we're fucking like 4 years on from when that album was actually written, and there's been a lot of shit that's obviously happened.
Absolutely, they've clearly been working on this for a while, and it shows. Like the detail and the levels to this are much more adventurous than anything they've done in the past. Especially, as you say, with the inclusion of the brass, which they've scattered throughout the album as well. It sounds epic on the album.
Yeah, it's cool.
The other thing that maybe I'm not hugely surprised about, because they've kind of alluded to it in a couple of the covers, but there's a little bit of an 80s tinge in here as well in places.
I think it's her voice. I
Absolutely.
think
Yeah,
the fact
100%.
that, once again, like, when those covers came out, we were
Yeah.
like, huh, well that, and now you hear it in the context of the album, you're like, smart.
Yes.
Like really,
Yeah.
really, really fucking
It's all
smart.
kind of linking together, yeah.
100%. It's they're building, when we talk about, like, seems like a bit of a jump, and then they'll do another album. You're like, well, actually, if they switch those albums, the order would make sense.
Yeah, yeah.
They've basically paved the path into this album from
Yes.
everything they've done from the release of the last album, which is fucking genius.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wish more bands did that.
Yeah, I was certainly getting it in the vocals on the Band with 3 Stripes, or in the title track as well. It's also got some kind of very kind of retro synths and drum sounds as well, which was giving me that kind of vibe. It's not like too potent on the album. It's just a little sprinkling.
Yeah, you're not
of it.
listening to Bananarama. You're fine.
No, it's just another element to keep you kind of intrigued in the album. There's also the techno type track, which is Welcome to the Next Level Above Human.
Yeah.
And when it kicked in, I was like, what is going on? What is happening here? And then I was like, oh, wait a minute. Okay, so the placement of this is very clever, because we're pretty much in the middle of the album. And it feels like it's there to kind of set up the second half of the album, which is like kind of like Curveball City, to be honest. The second half of the album.
Yeah, it's not Saturday City anymore. It's Curveball City.
No, absolutely not. It still has the punk tracks, which are kind of scattered in there, but then you've got like a straight up rap track called Born Again. I'm not totally sold on that, if I'm honest.
I'm of the J metal variety, so throwing in a curveball with a rap song for me is fine.
Right.
It's fine. As long as you're doing other shit, it's fine.
Stylistically, maybe not my favourite thing, but
not my tempo.
Not my tempo, but again, it shows how eclectic they are as musicians, and I felt like it linked well with Decades, which is one of the more kind of sentimental tracks where they use more electronic instrumentation. But I kind of then loved how Decades then went straight into Reap What You Sow, which is like,
oh god, man,
36 seconds of just straight up fury. Like, there's just no fucking no prisoners on that one.
We talk, like they did the thing as well that I like, me joking about. I was like, oh, so they've done their sentimental songs, so they're going to hit you with something hard.
Yeah.
What I love about Blood on this album is they hit you with something hard, and then the track that comes after, you like, we'll go back to a tempo like 50 seconds. It's just fucking, it's unrelenting.
Yeah.
It's absolutely unrelenting.
The end of the album. Okay, so the end of the album is not quite what I was expecting.
Did you think it was going to be heavier?
I kind of thought it would be. So the last 3 tracks, right? You've got World Domination, Losing Faith, and Tetragram. Yeah. And they are all similar in that they are more on the softer side of things.
Yes.
The distorted guitars are gone. They've swapped them for synths, and there's a bit of acoustic guitar and drum machines and stuff. All different sounding tracks, which I liked. And both World Domination and Losing Faith sound like album closers. So I was kind of like, World Domination finished, I was like, that was cool. That sounded like could be the end of the album. And I was like, wait a minute, let's do it again when Losing Faith, and we'll give you another track that sounds like an album closer. I was like, oh, okay, that was cool. And then the last track is Tetragram. And it was the one track out of the 3 I didn't felt like an album closer. It felt like a middle of the album type track for me. So,
weird, right? I'm yeah. We'll
so the end of the album for me was a little bit unusual. I was a little bit like, okay, cool tracks, but I'm not entirely sure I was sold on the way that it ended. The rest of the album is fantastic. I loved it. I think one of the reasons this is so good is vocally. I think Vicky has knocked this out the park. I think she's
incredible.
She brings something to this album that is just hard to capture. Like, she's got this intensity and kind of hostility on the punk tracks, which has so much personality and kind of character, but she's got creativity in her lyrics. But then she also has this really amazing clean tone, which when she does do that, those melodies really get etched on your brain. Like, she's very, very good at that side of it. But when I was listening to it, I was like, you've also got to give props to Ingvar as well, who is also doing a fucking fantastic job on vocals as well. He is
his counter melodies on
spot
this
on, yeah.
are like, especially
Awesome.
when you were in for it. Like, once again, why it's so smart to release "Losing Faith" as the first single, because it is basically just them,
Yeah.
right? And like the vocal harmonizing is just
Awesome.
like, it's divine.
Yeah.
It's absolutely divine.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I thought he was just as important vocally on the album as Nicky is. I love the little.
He writes a, like, what we
Yes.
found and what we maybe didn't appreciate in advance. The chief songwriter here.
Yeah,
And the fact that he did the recording as well.
He's outdone himself on this one.
He's a very, 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 very talented musician.
Yeah.
Who I think at times is easy to overlook, because Blood Command sometimes play kind of punky poppy songs. It's very easy to overlook how smart he is as a musician.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I think he's outdone himself on this one. Fantastic job. So finally for me, fantastic album. Really enjoyed it. The creativity on this one is awesome. I love the variety on here. I think they've blended things really well. A couple of little things that are a little bit maybe not my taste. The kind of rap track I wasn't a huge fan of, and the end of the album was a little bit strange, but it wasn't enough that to make me not enjoy it. But it was just not how I would have ended the album for me personally. What about yourself? What did you think of this one from Blood Command?
Dave. I love this, right? I can't even hold. I can't even hold. So I was already in on the singles. I'd pretty much made that clear. I like the diversity, because the very point you were talking about, like, some bands will just like settle in. Right, we did that. We'll just kind of keep it in and around there.
Yeah.
Instantly, there was a shift, change away from what was on the previous album, and I love the previous album. But like, there was like, it wasn't even growth. It just sounded like, right, we're not gonna settle here. We're gonna continue pushing things out. So I was already in. By the end of the first album, I felt the end of the first listen to the album, I was confused as fuck. There was so many moments I was like, that's right. But then I got to the end and I was just like, it was such an assault on the senses. Spun it again. That's when you spin that bad boy again, and I was starting to pick out like loads of things that were like, I fucking love how they do that. I love how they do this. This is really smart, because that links back into what they did during the, in between the albums, and this is a really cool punky. In fact, this is a lot more punky than I was expecting, and here's some black metal stuff, and I was like fucking hyper fixated, like a kid with ADHD. I was just like fixating on everything, like fucking dust particles in the air. I was just like falling about. Third listen settled right in. So I was like, all right, this is the analytical. This is the let's fucking separate the wheat from the chaff here. Listen, right? And by the third listen, I'd realised that I fucking really loved all of this. There is an element they bring. There's an element that Blood Command do that we haven't mentioned already that I can't stress enough, and that is the production on the bass. And they do it so much on this album, and every time they do it, I fucking smile. I want to throw horns up in the air and headbang like a motherfucker. Like, they'll do something, they'll strip it, and I'll just go like this fucking chunky, like huge fat PH sounding bass, and this drum where they'll build things up. And it just sounds it sounds Scandinavian, the same way that like, you listen to fucking Cult of Luna or like Meshuggah, and the bass comes in, you're like, oh, thick, like, you just, it's disgustingly heavy considering what everyone else is doing on the song. It just is needlessly heavy. And they have that all the way through this, and what I found is it works on both punk music and metal music. It fits the bill perfectly. The songwriting on this is brilliant. It hits you with like angular detail, punk flashes, like you say. It is not scared to. It'll do the Scandinavian punk and then switch to pop punk as if it was, as if they were the same genre, as if they were like husband and wife. They're not. there's a clear divide between those, but somehow Blood Command have worked out what the formula is that connects the two. And the metal stuff, when they throw it, like, I can't stress this enough, the Plague on Both Your Houses has a metal riff, which is one of my favourite metal riffs I've heard this year. Because it's standard metal.
Yeah.
You know, you're just like, fucking, it's almost psychosocial.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's 2 steps away from being psychosocial. It's just a fucking great riff. The elements that I love the most are all the stuff that are smartly put in between. And this is how I know that they're great songwriters. The electronics, the synth work particularly, especially when it moves into the kind of pop and rap domain, stay within a similar frame, so they don't change the sims too much, which I appreciate. It's very tempted to do a different sim on every song, but they actually keep them. Even when they're using like arpeggiators and stuff, the sims are weirdly similar, so it gives it a kind of locked in feel that works really well for me. The inclusion of the brass work is chef's kiss, and they do it 3 or 4 times on the album, and they link it with enough gap between them that you kind of forget them. So having it on the opening song and then bringing it in 4 or 5 songs later on is very, very, very smart. And the way it's used as well on the Band with 3 Stripes, where when that kicks in, that's the opening in, like, oh, we're going to shove on this Blood Command album. Remember when we listened to them and we're all like fucking thunder and punk metal stuff? Let's hit play, and then you get like the Wild West. And I'm not talking Will Smith Wild West. You get the Wild West. It kind of throws you down. And then the inclusion, I mentioned it, galloping. Like that. It's galloping drums, which sound like galloping horses. And I'm just like, this is the attention. And then you get, they might be one of my favourite bands for intros. The intro on Praise Armageddonism is fucking incredible. And this is up there with that. If they open with the Band with 3 Stripes on their upcoming tour, I'm going to be a fucking happy camper because it sounds amazing. The guitar work is awesome. Like, it's punky, sharp, but they are happy to switch into those black metal things. The drumming is incredible on this album. The drummer is good on the previous album. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right, it's the same guy.
Yeah.
Like, he's clearly... he was clearly holding back on the last album. Because he's, like, rapid as fuck. There is blast beats in here. They're not stock blast beats either. They've got personality. Even the way he does the fills into them, it's just awesome. The backing vocals, you mentioned it before. The backing vocals are, like, exquisite. As a front woman goes, I don't know if there's anyone as much a fireball as Nikki. I think she is like you almost wipe the spit off your face when you're listening to this. It's like she's right there in your face, grabbing you by the scruff and screaming everything. I love their lyrics. Their lyrics are always very playful about like kind of aspiration, fall from grace. They use a lot of movie imagery as well in their lyrics, which I kind of love, and I think she's really good at kind of articulating that. And then it's all the stuff in between. It's all the weirdness on this one. Welcome to the next level above human. I'm like you, the first time I heard it, I was like that. All right, 20 songs now make sense because the back half of this album is going to be completely different, and it kind of is. Like, the back half of this album, whilst it has maybe some of the more shorter and sharper tracks, certainly leans more into ballad territory, which you get on these 3 closing songs. Here's why I slightly disagree with you. World Domination feels like the close out of one side of the band shown on the album. Losing Faith feels like the close out of another side of the band on this album. And Tetragram, whilst it is very different, is the only track that she's not on. And I think it is actually the perfect closing song because it's the one that repeats the same theme over and over again, and it becomes mantric by the end of it. It's like it's an incredibly simple song. It is like it's essentially one hook played over and over again, repeated over and over again, but each time it comes in, it's slightly more prominent. It builds up to this crescendo that essentially ends with space, and I kind of love that about it. To me, it feels like it's weird that she's not on it, but at the same time, vocally, it's sublime, so it works for me. I was I was never concerned, but I fell so hard for Praise Armageddonism that this album was always going to be risky business for me. I thought like it could go anyway. And the singles, whilst I was all in, I'll be honest with you, I did have this feeling of we've heard 5 songs, 3 of which are ballads, and like 2 have got progressively heavier, but generally when a band does that, the predominant sound is what you've heard off the singles. And this couldn't be any different, and I should have more faith in bands that are a lot smarter than me. I would put this on par, if not above, Praise Armageddonism. I think as a singular vision, this is awesome, and there isn't one step on this one. Even the rap song, which, like I say, but if Baby Metal can throw rap in their albums, and I'm like, let's do the rap track. I'm down with that. It is a curveball for sure, but an album that's thrown so many curveballs, it actually weirdly gives you. It's maybe the only track out with a ballad on this one that gives you a bit of breathing room, because about 3 seconds after the track finishes, here comes the punk. Yeah, this is. They really are one of the most interesting bands out there just now. And we've already spoken tonight on the podcast about some bands that come off very well acclaimed albums and play it very safe on the album that follows up. I don't think Blood Command will ever do that, and I think the world is better for it.
Yep, agreed. Okay, so scores for the new album from Blood Command. As I said at the start, this was definitely a level up for me. This is all that you'd want from Blood Command and a whole lot more. I was dubious about the 20-track length to begin with. I was like, whoa.
This is not the right word. You were like fucking like in a manic state, just going, I don't get it. Duncan. Go and explain. I don't like why this one. And I'm like, I don't know. Maybe it'll make sense. You're like, but there's been 3 of them. Fucking distortion. What's happening?
But I think they pull it off very well. Even at 20 tracks long, I think it is pulled off very well. I'm a hardcore guy, so I loved the hardcore punk stuff, and this was fucking awesome. Best I've sounded in that style. A couple of choices that went to my preference, but very minor. And overall, this will still score higher for me than Praise Armageddonism did. So it's a 4.5 from me. Duncan, what are you scoring?
Here's the question I need to ask you. Right. What did I give Praise Armageddonism?
I think you were a 4.5. I think. I was a 4, 5, but I think you were above me at 4.5.
Yeah, that's what I had in my head. I had in my head that it was a 4.5.
I think so.
Because what I was about to say is this is a 5 for me, and had Praise Armageddonism being a 5, I would retrospectively put that to 4.5. I think this is like awesome, like across the board. This is a very me album. Like those that know Duncan know that I like things that are angular, challenging, different, and weird. And I think they've captured all that.
Yeah.
Like you were talking about even like the hardcore punk stuff and like the shortness of these tracks. See, their next live set is going to be absolutely fucking mental, because they can churn out a 30-second track like that and then right into something hooky, melodic, huge, and all the rest, and they could batter you like almost back to back with 3 hard-hitting, fucking fast-paced hardcore punk tracks, and then give you something else. It's the beauty of the way this. I actually really like the way it's composed, the way it's laid out. I think everything across. Yeah, I love these guys, man. I really, really, really do. I really, really, really do. And we'll see them in December. And maybe interview them again, and then we can pry out to how many albums he's recorded or written. Since this one was written, which was apparently written a wee while ago. So amazing. Yeah, love. I unabashedly love Blood Command. I think they're brilliant.
Yeah. Blood Command World Domination out September 29th on Hassel Records and Norwegian Loyal Blood Records as well. Links below to the band, to the pre-order on Bandcamp. Check it out. Let us know what you think. Once you've heard the album, the full album, within it all its glory, let us know what you think. That is a review. Thank you so much for checking it out. We'll be back with another review very soon. But until then, take care. Speak to you soon.
Bye, everyone.